Um, so I guess the two things that we're going to talk about today, what we'll start with is what you shared, Nina. There was the
Mhm.
last part of our book, Tao the Watercourse Way. It was the very end, um, and I'm really happy that you suggested reading this because hearing someone write about their relationship and what they knew about Watts is very different than just reading what Watts has to say. And I haven't really read a lot about other people's experiences with him. So that was really good to read, and
Wait,
we'll
what
we'll
was
start
other
with that.
people's experience with it? I didn't read that.
I'm
Well,
sorry.
So what was the experience? How was it? People's
Um,
experience with what?
so well, I was gonna see, Nina, you said that there were some takeaways that you had and some stuff you wanted to dig into. So
yeah, I can
I'm interested to hear what
definitely.
what stuck out to you at first.
Well, it actually made me really sad. um,
Really?
yeah, because it just sounds like Alan was a little bit tortured in a way of like he was like being pulled between two worlds, you know? And
Yeah.
there was a part in there where, and I'm not sure, I actually, oh, what's his name? I don't know how to pronounce his name. Al Chung Lang Huang, I think it is, who wrote this, who was just like a
Mhm.
friend and colleague of him, I guess.
Yeah.
He was just talking about how he didn't really feel a lot of like warmth from Alan, it didn't seem like, unless they were like drinking together or dancing. And there was a big undertone of just Alan being troubled trying to figure things out, and he was always trying like contradicting
Yeah.
himself and being critical of himself,
Hmm.
and what the things that he would say. And then when we listen to the lecture on top of it and the way that he speaks, it does feel like there's a lot of like back and forth. And I mean, it is the way that the world is, but it almost feels like it comes from a place of pain too, to me, where it's just like I can't understand why it's like this kind of thing, or like I understand why it's like this, but I wish other people would kind of see, but I don't want to change their minds. But it's like this war that's going on of him going back and forth of like, you know, the east and the west, and all these things. And there was one part that really like broke me down and was like, we got to talk about this. And I
Let's
think it
do it.
was, there was one part that, because they talked about how his colleagues like kind of just denounced him like once he started going on this path.
Hmm.
And that's gotta hurt a little bit too, but also they were saying that they were envious of him in the same breath, because they were almost like jealous in a way that he was able to live this like free lifestyle. But then as you're reading on, it doesn't seem like his lifestyle was that free. It seems like he found like it was like a burden to try to um just like get all this information out, and he felt almost like an obligation, like I have to give this information out to everyone through lectures and writings and all this kind of thing. So he was
Yeah.
almost like a slave to all these people around him. And it just seemed like he was struggling with that. And there's just so many parts in here that really just stuck out to me. And but there was one piece where I have it highlighted and I just have to find it. And it was about his drinking,
I
and
think I might know the line that you're looking for, but I'll let you
it was
find
like I like, oh sorry. No, you probably were right on it. It was something about like only liking himself when he was drinking.
it. Yeah, I don't,
And
but I don't like myself when I'm sober.
yeah,
Hmm. I know what you,
and
yeah.
the way the author wrote afterwards about it too, of like as he knowingly like takes this a drink with it, like knowing that it's not the right choice almost.
Hmm.
And when I read that line, I like reread the chapter again, and I was like, this is a person who's in pain. Like it just, and whether it's because he's like trying to be on the right path or whatever he's trying to do, it just seems like he was always struggling with these two worlds and like marrying them together. And maybe he was frustrated by it. I don't know if you picked up on the same kind of thing, but it really, like, it
Yeah.
almost upset me because I'm like, why am I feel like I'm part of the problem now that I'm reading his stuff and like, like
Uh,
perpetuating it.
wow. Well, I mean, that's it's a really great takeaway, Nina. Um, this detail about Watts is so interesting to hear people um talk about because usually when people first start, they hear about Alan Watts and they learn about him, they all do the same thing that they do with any other source of what they consider to be truth or knowledge. Or, I mean, because like I think we can agree, although he never wanted to be seen in a way, some kind of, some even still view Watts as a form of a guru. And he never really
Mhm.
wanted to be viewed that way. But the way that he talks and the points that he makes could be very well taken as a guru. And the minute that they learn that because he was an alcoholic, there's no doubt about that.
Mhm.
That's a well-known thing, and um, in this bit here, kind of pulls back the curtain a little bit on, his feelings about it. Saying I don't like myself when I'm sober, and you know, it's very interesting because it does a lot of things to people. Some people immediately discredit him because they see the clay feet and they're like, okay, well there it is. Everything he says has to now mean a little bit less. Some people, I'm in myself. I kind of shared how you felt. Like it's kind of painful. Like you kind of share the pain in a way, right? Like you just get a
Mhm.
different look of things, and then like once you know this, everything you listen to, like the audios of him speaking, everything they change just a little bit, and you start to hear sort of like the contradictory sort of battle going on in his discussions. And one thing that I feel is this little detail about him like kind of battling between these two worlds. I feel I relate to very strongly, just because of my own upbringing. Like I was a somewhat devout Catholic at a point, and I mean Watts was as well. He served in the ministry in a way. He wasn't a priest, but he was a very well educated Catholic, and I'm sure believed to a certain degree the things that Catholics believe. And I think the way I read this sort of hey, like him saying he doesn't like himself sober, and hearing these sort of contradictions or just conflicts, like internal conflicts, come out with like balancing like the East and West world. I kind of view it as I mean he was a scholar at heart, which is really built upon logic and reasoning, which is like what the Western world has sort of built everything on. And that's a really hard model to escape, especially when it's a reliable model and it's a model that works. And I would say like the Eastern model of the world sort of, especially in this specific context, hinges more on a faith sort of basis. Um, like especially Taoism, like, just letting things be the way they are. And I think growing up a Westerner makes that a very hard thing to digest, no matter what. Um, Watts has a talk where he talks about meeting Carl Jung and how that solidified to him that he will always be a Westerner, that he can't get away from those roots. And trying to get away from those roots is a form of separation, which is in conflict to the Eastern views that he ascribed to and would practice and learn about. And that's a kind of a paradox in a way, right? Like how you can't be like none of us. I mean, like anyone grown, born and raised in the West is likely not going to be able to adopt and feel these Eastern mentalities and traditions at the depth they would if they were born in these cultures. And so I think just naturally this sort of conflict arises. And I mean, in this chapter, this little piece, he singles it out perfectly. He's like, Alan was shy, and he wasn't very um, affectionate until he had some alcohol, where he loosened up and he kind of threw away some of these things and was a lot more open and laughable, and um, you know, he would dance and stuff. That stuff he wouldn't do when he was drinking, and to me that just sounds very Western because that's I'm like that. I don't dance or anything unless I have a little help, and
It is a lot easier.
it is a lot easier. And um, so I mean, I don't feel as sad anymore as I did about it. Um, but it is sad. For someone to be so insightful and still feel pain that we can recognize and that pain that we felt. Um, I mean, I think this is a very insightful bit of the book, and very important to read for people who are interested in learning about Watts and just kind of like what another perspective is. Someone who is very close to him.
Well, I think it's really like the way you can look inside yourself too, and like what you're trying to get out of him. Like when you listen to the lecture too, and he's talking about all of you are here, and I don't want to be too presumptuous, but I bet you're all here to like improve yourselves in some way, right? So
Mhm.
he's constantly surrounded by people who say they love him, but they're trying to take something from him.
They have a goal. Yeah.
Yeah. And
No, I don't.
when he's,
Yeah.
well, when he said, when people come around with, oh, all this love and all this, I lock my door, like, and
Buy a
draw
gun
my
and
gun.
bar my
Yeah.
door.
Yeah. um, it's like he's trying, I don't know, because in the chapter too, there was a line and it said something about and I have this part right up here now, and it was like in later life he depended more on his external need to perform and to receive support from his audience. He was constantly pulled by outside demands. He was too successful to stop and too brilliant to submit to his own nature. So he was like being pulled into this like performance role. But this kind of this chapter just like made him seem more human, like you're saying that he gets looked at as a guru all the time. But when you like learn about his life and like you start hearing about his struggles too, he is more relatable in that sense of like we're all kind of the same, dealing with our own demons, for lack of a better way to describe it. But
Yeah.
that whole piece where like I bet that's like where some of that, I don't know if it's really animosity that he has. Like, I mean, we would never be able to know like really what he was truly feeling about his audience, but when he talks to them, it's very different from Ram Dass, which was the first person that Rave had introduced me to in all of this like realm,
Yeah.
where Ram Dass seems to be so like very peace and love, and
He speaks to the heart.
yeah, and Alan's just kind of like pushing away that piece of like, well, that's hypocrisy, like always, like it's never like true. It was weird when he said that in the lecture. Maybe I interpreted it differently,
No,
but
I also feel like for Alan Watts, it's like here's a bunch of people loving him because his talks
mhm,
aids their survival, you know? Like them listening to him improves their odds in surviving in this universe that is like mysterious and ambiguous and makes it more certain, you know? However, that's like in direct contradiction to the content or the context of what he's teaching, right? Because it's like it's all about letting go of the need of survival and all these needs to like know who you really are. Yeah. So, but here are a bunch of people listening to him because in a way where they love him in a way where this guy helps me survive, so I like this guy rather than
Mm.
here's me and I like myself. You know.
mhm.
I had the chance to speak with Mark Watts,
Mhm.
who is Alan Watts' son, and
Mhm.
Mark is actually um, the one. He is the Alan Watts organization, or obviously like the big part of it, and responsible for some of the recordings that we listen to. And he shared, uh, a sentiment that Alan had, that at the end, you know, the entertainment cycle that he found himself in, the regular people. I mean, because the point, of Alan's work, from Alan's point of view, is to, you know, get, pretty much get the message out. And then it's like how it was said in this bit, it's like, once you get the message, hang up the phone. And if people keep showing up and hearing these things, and you'll find like all these talks with Alan, like they're very similar, right? They very overlap very much, and I think
Yeah.
that's intentional. And really, if you really get this, like if you have like what you need, there's really not a reason to keep tuning in, right? But people would, and I guess what he picked up on eventually is people were kind of, I guess, like gathering around to listen for different reasons,
Mental
and they weren't
masturbation kind of.
wasn't sort of, yeah. I mean, in a intellectual, it was just entertainment, and everyone probably took that to a certain degree. I mean, maybe people felt better or smarter because they understood certain references. I mean, this happens with everything,
Mm.
right? Anything
Mhm.
created with like the genuine intent will always find its way into the hands of people who, they're just going to use it as something else to prop themselves up. And there's no avoiding that, no matter how
Mhm.
good things are. I mean, we see it all the time. um, and he recognized that, and I think that was probably hard, um, and part of the conflict that he faced. In a way, not that I like, would wish it, or like, not in a way of supporting it in a healthy way, but in a way I can appreciate this element, um, to Alan Watts, because it humanizes him. Here's a guy saying that I'm no different than anyone else, and I shouldn't really be taken as a guru. I consider myself like a spiritual entertainer. And I'm sure there's people being like, "Oh, okay, yeah, but you're speaking about some pretty cool stuff, and of course you have to say this, because if you come out and say I'm a guru, then you get propped up in a certain way."
Yeah.
But I feel like his habits in his personal life, in his transparency into those things, um, is, it comes through. Like, he meant it. He's like, I'm no better. He's like, I'm just
Mhm.
as much of a rascal as anyone else. I enjoy doing this. And, you know, despite like how we may feel, the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. Like, we see it. And I mean, you felt it. Like, there is pain, and that's real. And that note about in
Yeah.
the mind over mind lecture, with him saying, anytime I hear people about preaching about love and everything, I buy a gun and bar my door.
Yeah.
I think, you know what he's speaking to. I mean, this is just my interpretation, of course,
Mhm.
but I find that when people, when this is like a huge focus, like, free love and everything, it gives the scent of being all inclusive, but it's never really all inclusive, and it really can't be all inclusive. Um, because there's always, how do you know, like, all this, all the love and everything, without knowing where it's lacking? Like, I mean, isn't that the way where we could know where to show love, is where we don't find it? I mean, it's necessary for love to cultivate. And so I think, because he gives this example, I think, along with other examples, like a pestiferous mass amount of saints.
Mhm.
Like he's like, if we could like breed like virtuous people, we would have like too many of them, and it'd be a problem. Just like a swarm of locusts, like it's like too much of a good thing. I mean, it's just like anything else. It's like even water, the thing that we need to survive on. Like, you could drink yourself to death with water. You
Mhm.
can overhydrate
Yeah.
yourself,
Yeah.
and so, you know this there's nothing wrong with, like, you know pushing a love agenda, but at the same time, I think that it's just in those efforts we forget the background. What is behind the the campaign for love? Like what is
Mm.
pushing that along? And I think that's a huge part of like the mind over. There's two big things for me that come from the mind over mind audio. The first one is
Mhm.
what we're talking about is the forgetting or the lack of focus of the supporting element of whatever we're talking about. So if we're talking about you know pushing like this big love thing that he references, we have to think about, well, what's the seed? Like, what created that? Well, it's probably a lack of love. And
Mhm.
so, in a weird, somewhat paradoxical way, we have to say thank you to this like lack of love in order
Mm.
for us to have brought love into that space.
Shine awareness on
Um,
it. Yeah.
yeah, we have to be aware of it. I mean, if we're
Mm.
really going to see the whole thing and call ourselves reasonable, otherwise we're an illusion, right? If we think it's just love, that's an illusion, just like everything else. Like, to say that a book is just full of words is only describing part of the book because all the words are on paper. So
Mhm.
is the book full of words or is it full of paper? And I mean, if it's only full of paper, it's useless because there's nothing on the paper. I mean, that's sort of the mentality I usually approach those things at this point. I mean, I didn't at first. Um, the second thing in this lecture that I think is very difficult, but is what he's going after is just the hopeless nature of this like problem we find ourselves in and how it's found in everything. Like he starts out saying we have the same problem and it's found in all sorts of beliefs and all sorts of cultures. And for the Christians it's with grace, where it's like you have to accept grace, but the Christians also believe that you know like if that your original like this your nature is unaccepting of grace. So it's like, okay, how am I supposed to accept this if I am predispositioned to not? Like, how is that even possible? And then the Buddhist Eastern view of this is, well, if you want to achieve supreme peace and enlightenment, you just have to let go of all your desires. And your immediate approach to that is like, okay, I'm going to try to let go of everything. And then you
Mhm.
find yourself really like trying and desiring to not desire, which is, as he says, a desire
Yeah.
in and of itself.
To let go
and
of letting
and you
go.
and you can't do that. Like you can't like say, okay, I'm gonna like trick. I mean, really, you have to end up like quote, tricking yourself, right? You have to surprise yourself into letting go. But the minute that you realize that you're doing that, you're trying,
You know,
and so
yeah, this is
it's
something I found
crazy.
really fascinating, right? Especially if you like study other stuff about manifesting and stuff like that, woo-woo stuff. The key idea, like they said in like, it's also this is as they said in the mind over mind lecture, where it's just like breathing. You take it in, yeah, hold it and let it
Hmm.
go, yeah. And in my head, it always felt like, okay, if I have a desire, why would I like have a desire, then let go of the desire? And once I let go, the thing I wanted just appears based on synchronicity, timing, and stuff like that. But that really seems to be the process. And what I'm thinking is the process of having an intention, having a desire, then having an intention, yeah, and then visualizing it, like brings it to your awareness, and then letting go somehow removes the resistance of you getting it. Because I feel like the the desire also creates resistance, but it also shines consciousness on the things that you do want. But it's at the price of also creating resistance, because when you think of, oh, I want this watch, is coming from this implied sense of I don't have it, so I want it. That's what desire is, right? It's a lack, and you think, if I get this, then the lack disappears, yeah, which
Hmm.
might not be true. But the entire process really seems to be you have to like have a desire, and then let go of the desire so that you can allow that stuff to come in based on its time and stuff like that. And that really seems to be like the key of manifesting, and that's what even Alan Watts says. And I'm like, I don't exactly know why you have to like first desire and then allow and let go of the desire, which I find really fascinating. I'm still trying to like puzzle out why that's the case, and this is my theory right now. Yeah.
I always I mean, we really do get hung up on desires to varying degrees. Some of
Yeah.
them we're okay with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if we think about the simple pleasures of like eating ice cream every day or something like that. Like that's one that we're not too hard on ourselves on. But there are other desires that we have a lot of guilt and shame tied
Mm-hmm.
to. And
Yeah.
lately, anytime I start feeling those things, it's kind of like a signal to pause and kind of reflect. Because how I mean, you have to think like we really don't have like our desires sort of just bubble up spontaneously.
Yeah.
Like we don't really set ourselves up to have them. They just kind of come up. It's really um it's just kind of like the weather almost. And now we do have some influence of what we can do about them, which is where I think our responsibility comes in. But I don't think that we should really hold much responsibility for them being there initially. I mean, that's a pretty heavy burden to put on people to say that if you even have the desire, you should start feeling guilty and bad about this.
Yeah.
But if you never put it there in the first place, I mean, like you're just going to feel like you're a terrible person. You're actually putting yourself in a system to fail. Because if you're measuring your success and worth and value and all of these things based on what spontaneously arises in you, how are you ever going to like feel like anything other than guilt and shame and anger and all those things?
You know, man, what you just said makes so much sense because it's like that. I feel like the desires are an expression of your ego. Because think about what an ego is, right? Ego is like this bunch of lacks that you have that's unique to you. You know, here's me that I lack this, and this, and I have this, and this. You know what I mean? And that's me with my and each lack has its own backstory, character development, arc, and all that stuff. You know what I mean? And that's me, right? And I feel like a desire is almost like a expression of your ego, what your ego believes to have or not have. And then so that's why I feel like desire is almost natural. And I feel like letting go of the desire once you have it is almost like letting go parts of yourself. Because you realize you had it all along. It was never outside and then it was always inside. That kind of stuff. You know? That's what you said made me think of. Maybe desires are just expression of maybe desires are just uh like a desire is just the calling of the inner child of the ego saying I want this, and once I want this I'll feel complete, I'll be complete, you know. And you have to like let go of that. But to let go of the desire you must almost let go of the pleasure that you would get from the external source coming and filling in that void. You know what I mean?
I'm thinking.
Well, I think that Food said it best when you're desiring something to kind of pause for a second. And I think
Mm,
that's, and think about it. Because I think, I don't want to like generalize, but I mean, it's something I struggle with. And when you think of it as just like spontaneous thought, and even in the lecture, Alan was talking about just how we neurologists try to understand the brain and they can't understand any of it, basically. Um, and we're trying so hard to understand something that we just like, even the highest scientists and everything don't understand all of it either. So it's like when those thoughts pop in, I mean, I think about desire sometimes as like food or cake or something, in that moment where you're like,
Yep.
man, I really could go for cake right now,
yeah, yeah,
And it's like, in those moments, it's like, I don't know what made me think of that. I mean, me and my friend were just talking about it while when we're hiking or like doing some big, like strenuous activity. We always, for some reason, desire the most like out there kind of meals afterwards, but like stuff we never really eat regularly anyway. So it's like, oh, I
Yeah.
want the chocolate cake with M&Ms on top, and then ice
Yeah.
cream, and this and that, like all these big things. And they just like spontaneously pop into our brains. Probably because our body is just like lacking all kinds of things. But um, when you think about it like food, and food's a complicated topic because some people assign a lot of guilt to food and what their thoughts are with that.
Hmm.
But I think some people don't. So if you're thinking about desires as like, oh man, like I'm just like craving a peanut butter sandwich, a peanut butter jelly sandwich,
Yeah.
it's easier to let that kind of stuff go, which is interesting. It's like the bigger picture stuff, like where I want to be in 5 years, or, those
Mhm.
big improvements of like, oh, I have to get that promotion, or those big desires, desiring like a partner or something like that. Then when you come down to it and you're like, though that thought almost holds the same weight as like, I want cake tonight,
Yeah.
then it's like, is it that big of a deal anyway? It's
Yeah.
just another thought. Like every thought in your brain kind of holds the same weight in a way. Even if it's like future thinking about big picture stuff, or if it's something as little as like what I'm gonna have for lunch today.
I feel
I
like
might have just like went completely off topic.
no,
Sorry.
no. I feel like hunger is a very easy desire for us to be conscious of as what the root is. Oh, I'm here, I'm outside, I feel hungry, so I need the chocolate cake, sugar. Makes sense. But something like, oh, I want to have an amazing life in 5 years. Why do you want to have an amazing life after 5 years? I don't know. It'd make me more money. I could be more free.
Mm.
How, why do you want to be free? Where do you feel trapped right now? And everything becomes more ambiguous. You don't know. Hmm, I know I feel trapped, but where exactly? What aspect of my life do I feel bad? It takes a lot of introspection to like get to the truth. But you don't exactly know the root cause, but you just kind of have this feeling or the desire that if I just get a good life in 5 years, boom, all my suffering, misery gone, done. And it could be like a perpetual myth, like said by the society as well. That's the kind of uh, the story that goes on, right? Which is like, oh yeah, oh wait, you're unhappy, dude. Is either money, partner, or health. That's it. Wait, you're sad? Oh, that's probably because your life sucks, dude. Yeah, you need to have a good life. Wait, you have a good life and you're still sad? Maybe because you don't have that ideal partner. You need to get that. Wait, what? You have this? Probably your health problem, dude. You gotta eat more healthy. And then you're still sad. And then you like start watching Alan Watts, yeah.
No, but you're right. I think it's like our world kind of revolves around how to what your purpose is, how you're going to improve yourself, what success is. Like everything's about success.
Yeah, but why do you want
And
success is the bigger question.
yeah, and I mean, and what is success, right?
Mm,
Like it's different for everybody.
yeah.
Success for some
Hmm.
people can be just living off the grid, like away from it all. Success for others is like, I just need to buy a house or I need to start a family. But it doesn't usually end at that one, you know, goal that you think it is. Like it's just, and a lot of times people get there, and this is kind of goes back to, my gosh, why can't I think of the name of the movie now? We watched it. It was Soul, wasn't it? Yeah.
Oh, Soul? Oh my God,
um,
everyone watched it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a good
But it
movie.
kind of goes back to that, where he thought like success was, he was gonna, like his whole life, like he was gonna get into this band, he was gonna get famous or whatever was gonna happen, and that was gonna be it. And once he got there, he was like, okay, so now what? It's like, well, now you have to just keep living. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny, right? In that movie, the Soul movie, the guy, some context, this guy is like a jazz teacher who wants to be like a musician or something. And then in the end,
mhm.
he gets a band, right? And he says to the person after the band show, I thought this would make me happy. I thought everything would feel complete. And she was like, honey, you would never feel complete. Just keep living.
That's like the fish in the water story.
Yeah,
That's so.
So I think
true.
I
Mhm.
think a note that we're kind of circling that was in the audio is the reason that you're not better is because you want to be, and I think that's a very revealing statement. because I mean, I think one thing that the like I said, there was two things in this audio, and the first one that's very direct is that you can't improve yourself. Like this whole idea of self improvement, which shouldn't be confused with like being skillful. Um, but really, what he's getting at is all these things are sort of set up by us. Um, like if you go on like a self improvement kick and you say I want to be better, this all comes from your measurement of yourself and what you think you should, which is an important term, should be.
Mm,
And I think this is present in a lot of the things that we've just talked about. Like we've talked about desire and our reaction to desire, which is always driven by a should. Like I shouldn't feel this.
yeah.
I shouldn't eat this. And then we start doing this whole self-measuring thing where, uh, well, if I'm eating this or if I'm feeling this, I must be such a person. But all that is should because you're comparing. I mean, you touched on this. Like where do these things come from? Like what model are you comparing yourself to?
Yeah.
It comes from something rooted inward. Um, and maybe we're unaware of it, and you hit the nail on the head. Like there's some easy ones where like eating and food are very easy to identify, but there are some others we just don't understand where they're rooted and why they are.
Yeah. Kids
um
don't have those.
it,
Only we do. Like a learned thing.
I definitely think that it could be a learned thing. I would challenge though that if you could find the root of all of your desires and you could figure them all out, do you really think that it would stop them?
Mm-hmm. I think that's what Alan Watts is. I think that's the work of Alan Watts, Ramdas, and everything else, right? Even
Hmm.
Buddha, like, oh, desire is root of all suffering, or just let go of the desire. I feel, I feel the entire premise that they are coming from is you don't have to have desire in the first place because you are complete. There's nothing that you there's nothing that you lack that you would get from something coming into your life. And I think that's the message everyone's pushing. Like you, but here's the thing though. If let's say you are complete, right, then your identity wouldn't make much sense because your my identity is coming from, oh, I have this lack, and each lack has its own fucking backstory. I had because this bad, I don't know, my father did this, my school system, papa papa, and that makes me. For you it would be like a different set
Yeah.
of like lacks. You were like born in America, papa papa, grow up, kids,
Hmm.
whatever, and this way now you have this lack, and that's sports. But if you let go of all that story, and there are so many stories we subscribe to, and so what I was like thinking about, and I was like watching someone else. There's so many stories that you're subscribed to. Like this moment right now is so mysterious. It doesn't feel so mysterious, right? But if you remove stuff like remove that, remove the belief or the idea that you subscribe that we are living on planet Earth, that there's a big globe spinning, papa papa, all that stuff. Remove that, all right? Remove the notion of past. So the idea that you're born, gone. You have all this health problem, gone. Remove the concept of entire biology. You have hands, inside that there's veins, bones. Remove that, right? For some time. Let's entertain this idea. That's gone. Yeah. Remove that here and now. That's gone. And you look at this moment, right? It's fucking mysterious. It's like, okay, where am I? No idea. Who am I? No idea. You're just there in this moment, just lost. And that's all there is. Even you guys are just aspects of my direct experience, and that's all I really have. Even the idea of I have one experience, you guys have one experience, that no, even that is for like a belief, right? Because as far as I'm conscious of, everything I see is in my direct experience. That's all I'm really conscious of. You having your own direct experience, something I'm like believing to be true. But if you
That
remove,
kind of ties into something that you shared, Nina. You were
Mhm.
talking about
Mhm.
how all these thoughts are somewhat weighed the same. Um, and I think that's a very valuable insight because
Yeah,
even the ego is a thought, and that's something that Taoism, Buddhism, all these things sort of help us understand deeper. Is that this ego and this identity? It feels very real and it feels very heavy, or maybe it feels light because you like it. But just no matter your disposition towards it,
yeah,
it has the same weight as any other thought or belief that you hold. And I think there is sort of a relief with that realization. Kind of like, taking off a tight. It's exactly how Ram Dass says, taking off a tight shoe.
Mhm.
yeah,
I did I did like what you said about how if you find the root cause of the desires, you'd still have those desires, probably. I mean, I don't think that if you found the reason,
no,
at least in my life personally, I mean, anytime that I've found like my parents' voice coming out of me or like, their thoughts in my brain where I'm like, I know exactly where that comes from. Um, it went from like this feeling of trying to fight back against that piece of you to kind of laughing about it a little bit because you do know where it comes from, and it's just kind of funny how life works like that, or like how easily influenced you are as a child. And
yeah,
then you're it's kind of like the foundation of a home, kind of like what we were talking about with Alan earlier too, like having this foundation of maybe it's a certain kind of faith or religion or however you grew up, whatever those that nurture piece of development,
yeah.
and trying to fight against that always is going to always lead back to that foundation because it's in you. So it's just taking the least amount of effort approach of just recognizing those thoughts as just thoughts in you. It's
You,
just funny like how much weight we put on everything.
What you just said was so
Like,
true about that knowing your why, all that stuff. It just doesn't help because it's something that we still because but it doesn't remove the craving, right? It doesn't actually remove the desire. Now what? It just made the desire more
no.
real, Oh yeah, yeah, I have this. Of course, my childhood. This happened at age 5, and this happened. This led to the consequence at age 7. And here I am. It makes it more real. Hmm. That brings to the thing. You guys think desires are even real in the first place? Would you call desires real?
I mean, just as real as any other thought. They can
Yeah,
feel very real.
yeah.
Um,
They feel very
you
real.
you ex they do feel real. Um, Nina, you expanding on this kind of gave me some more thoughts, and I thought, chasing the roots of like all these desires and figuring out like where they come from, it doesn't really answer for why they even like how they even come up, right? We just know where they come from, but we don't know the how. And thinking about that more, it kind of reminded me of our conversation, who knows how long ago, about someone looking at a flower, and like a botanist would know all these parts and all this science and all this about the flower, and a kid would just know that the flower's pretty, and they're both
Oh,
right to
yeah.
varying degrees.
Mhm.
And looking at taking that sort of frame of mind and putting it into this discussion about desire, it's I feel like you could take the same approach where you don't even really need to know how it comes up or
Mm,
even really fully where it comes from. I mean, maybe there's a benefit to knowing some sort of depth, but at the end, no matter how much you know about it, um, you I think just recognizing the nature like of this being, what the flower is
Mhm.
pretty. This is desire. It is a thought. Um, is kind of relieves us from like a lot of self-imposed work. It's not to say that the work is bad, but I
Yeah.
often think that the work is sort of misguided, right? Because we're trying to solve something, but it's like
Uh-huh.
trying to solve a problem that we didn't even put in place, like we didn't even do anything about. It just kind of came up, and that's a
Mm,
really, it's a really hard thing to
yeah.
tackle.
Do you
Um,
feel like
Well,
desire?
it's
I'm sorry, go on,
I was just going to say it's funny that you said that because I wrote down like as Vito was talking about like stripping away everything and like just like when you get down to the bare bones of everything, I wrote down like it takes a lot of effort to do that and to think about having to figure out, oh, where does this desire come from, and like trying to understand it more. It's a lot of
Mhm.
effort to get to the same place you already were,
Yeah.
where it's just this thought in your head and
Yeah.
you're like,
yeah,
well, the desire's still there, but I guess I understand it more now, which doesn't make it go away, it doesn't make it
Mm.
better, it doesn't make it worse, it just is there still.
I think the
So I mean,
language.
like,
Sorry, go on.
crazy.
I think the
Sorry, you can go.
language. I think the language that desire speaks is different from the language we speak. The thoughts and stuff like that. It's like French and English. They kind of sound similar, but no matter how much English you speak, you can never you can. There's nowhere like French suddenly just pops out. Or you like start speaking the language of French. No matter how much English you speak. That's what I'm like coming to realize about thoughts as well. I feel like desires just speak a different language altogether, and it's not like a language of logic. Definitely, I feel it's more like the language of definitions. But here's the thing, though. I think this idea is in Buddhism as well. But I feel, do you feel like desire is an expectation that you have on a world? An expectation by I mean like a payoff that you could have, and you think a desire is the pleasure that you get from having an expectation, which gives you a certain payoff in future. I feel like for me, just identifying the payoff and realizing, what, this payoff actually doesn't serve me, allows me to let go. And I think that's what most stories do, right? Uh, uh, the hero has an expectation, right? That, oh, if I get this, a desire, an expectation in the future that if it comes true, he would be happy or something. Then he goes through a lot of suffering, trials, and tribulations. Then he realizes, okay, the suffering I'm experiencing right now is not worth the payoff that I'm going to get through my expectation, right? He drops expectation, right? He lets go, like the Alan was saying, like he breathes out finally rather than holding it in. And once he like breathes out, everything like flows, like whoop it. Oh, now he knows like he doesn't get what he wants, but he gets what he needs, kind of thing. And he's finally happy, he's content, everything that he thought his expectations would get, he now has because he let go of that payoff that he would get out of the expectation. And I think I always in the past I used to speak about the payoff that you get from the expectation itself, but I also now think you get a payoff just by having an expectation. Like in gamblers, when they gamble, dopamine is not released when they win. The dopamine is released in the process of anticipation. And I feel desires have the same shit as well. Of course, you're going to get a payoff for some like few seconds after you get that expectation met. But I feel like that entire process of anticipation and like thinking, oh, once I do this and do this and do this, boom, the expectation I have will become real. I'll get that watch, I'll get this girl, whatever. I think that anticipation also like gives you some sort of pleasure in the moment. That's very hard to let go. But I feel it's so
Well,
indicious in nature because you just can't see it.
and I think it goes back to that whole notion that if you're not doing anything, you're like lazy or it's bad.
mhm.
If you're not actively working towards something, then our society thinks that that's a bad thing. And it's kind of like this grand marketing scheme of
Yeah.
extrinsic motivations of like what you need to do to like have purpose and be a good member of society and all
Yeah,
that
because only then the
stuff
society
that
runs, right?
really
Ima- that's why like drugs like LSD are illegal because imagine this entire society just takes LSD and just chilling at their house, right? The society is gonna crash, you know. Like the society is not built to like equip that kind of lifestyle yet, where everyone is just chilling
mm,
and like doing what they love to whatever the capacity and abundant stuff like that. It very much is like, okay, here's an ideal, here's a billboard, this is what a woman should look like, here's what a guy should look like, courage, here's what a woman should look like. Uh, and this is where you have to like be one day. All right. So here you are in this rat race, trying to be that because you feel like, oh, I have all these problems right now. But if I could be that guy, then I wouldn't have all these problems, and I'll be like free. And I feel like this, and I feel like this desire to be free. I wouldn't call it a desire to be free. I would call it an inner knowing that we are free, and our soul trying to like earnestly express our freedom is something that's constant through all human beings. I feel everyone is trying to find, or everyone is trying to tune into their freedom in different ways. Some people draw, some people write, some people make movies, whatever. And I feel that is much more natural to like a wu wei kind of thing rather than a desire, because I feel somewhere inside we know that's who we are, free. But the way we define everything right now, it doesn't feel like that, because you don't have enough money, you don't look good, you're not good looking enough, you're not charismatic enough, you don't have the popularity points. Who knows you? No one. The likes you get on the picture, you don't get enough likes, stupid stuff like this. you know yeah.
The so something you both kind of touched on, a lot of measuring. Vito, you're talking about the impression that you make in a lot of different areas, like especially social media. And you mentioned sort of like this idea of being lazy,
Yeah.
and really that idea of being lazy could be translated to what value does it bring, as if every single thing needs to bring value. And because
Yeah.
like like who's measuring value, like what's like like it's just like even like this discussion, like this is valuable to us, but it's not to say it's valuable to everybody. But it doesn't mean that we have less of this discussion because it's not as valuable to someone else.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of a note. Watts talks about, he's really talking about education and how the biggest mistake is they started giving honors for learning. So like you're the whole point of learning is because you have a curiosity, right? Like there's
Yeah.
something that you're interested in, but the system is just sort of like it's rewarding people for just like learning itself. Like it's just very stripped of all of its like real essence. Where I think he uses like French.
French.
Yeah, where he's like, you should learn French
Yeah.
because you're interested in French and you want to talk to French people and experience French culture. And like once if it's all about the degree, like you kind of strip away like all the Frenchness of like what you're doing. And I mean, he makes a good parallel to society where it's like if you want to make good clothes, that's a great occupation. Like there can be great things that come out of that. And if you enjoy that, but once you stop really being interested in that and actually making clothes that people can wear and you can see people wearing them and enjoy that, but once you try to make money, which is no different than trying to learn for a degree, um, you hear that dog.
Sorry.
Even your
It's
dog
okay.
disagrees with this concept of
Um,
systems and stuff.
yeah, I know
Got
he's
dog
feeling it.
news. Yeah.
Um, I mean, once you like start, making clothes for money, then you don't really care about what it takes to
Oh.
make the clothes, and you
Yeah.
probably stop worrying about how comfortable they are and how expensive they are and how many people can access them. Like it becomes like very different, like we're from where we started. And so I think there's something to be said about how especially Western culture stifles a lot of these things because it's considered lazy or it doesn't have a lot of value. And I mean, maybe something does have less value. I mean, I would argue that, yeah, like certain things may, like as a society, have more value than others. But I don't think that a lack of value immediately means that it's obsolete and it shouldn't be entertained.
Yeah.
And
Moods.
it's
Yeah.
a dangerous precedent, really.
Yeah. You know what? I just realized. I understand what you're saying. Dovetailing on what you just said, right? Oh my God. I think I understand. I feel there are two sets of um, desires, I would say. One is like the survival desires, right? Trying to like keep this body functioning, trying to meet the needs of survival like food, water, shelter, social status, right? And I feel there's another desire to like know ourselves and be ourselves. Like I feel there are certain values that is just true to who we are, and our soul has this yearning to know it. Like freedom, love. I'm not talking about love like in romantic sense, like Ramdas love, uh, free, compassionate. Because you know this, because every time you feel free, you're like fucking happy, ecstatic. You're in the present, in the moment. Yeah. When you're free, you're in
Yeah.
this moment. When you're loving, you're in the moment. It brings you to the present. All the past future disappears. There is that. And then there is the other needs of survival. And what you're basically saying is, highlighting is like if you have to learn French because it kind of like uh, is more truer, or it strengthens the part of you, the yearning part of you, Oh, learning French makes you more free, more loving, more curious. That brings you more to the present, stuff like this. But then
More alive.
more alive, yeah. But then you're mixing that with the survival needs, which is that, oh, uh, to get money, stuff like this. And then it gets corrupted almost. I'm not saying money is bad. I'm talking about the intention of getting money. You could still like get money or whatever, but the intention of, oh, I'm finally doing it for my survival, rather than me wanting it to be free, is what I think fucks it up. Like for me, I'm doing my degree just
Well,
because computer science earns good money. Not, I mean, I like it, not to the point where I like this.
well, Alan kind of talks about that in the lecture too, about our like I guess our desire to like make things easier, I guess, or like fix problems, like improve the way that we do things. So I think he used DDT as an example of like how that was like an epic failure, but it was meant to, remedy some kind of problem. And then it in turn created an even larger problem. And I don't know what the purpose was of like putting a price tag on education. I don't know if there was like a good like intention behind that. Maybe it was for the professors or something like that, but it obviously has gotten out of hand, and it reminds me of things like McDonald's or Walmart. Like maybe at their core they had some really great intentions, and it kind of circles back to what we were talking about earlier with Alan, even just in general, that with all of his lectures and his work, he has like really great intentions, but I mean, our world tends to take those good intentions and run with it, and then can turn them into bad
Mm,
things
yeah, the
if
pathway
they
to
want them
hell
to
is
be,
built with good intentions. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Exactly. So it's
yeah.
just like it is. I don't know what that is in us as like a whole. I think like at its core, yeah, like we're trying to make things easier, like building cars so we can travel easily and see the world, and like there is like some good intention in that, but it always takes from something else. So,
I feel that good intention is lesser than your need to survive. I feel if your intention is much more than your need to survive, you'd have like a Ramdas Allen Watt effect. You're just
mhm,
doing, you have enough money to like eat, sleep, go wherever you want. You're abundant
mhm.
in the moment, right? You have everything that you need, kind of, and it's just like wooing life. But I feel like anytime you prioritize your need for survival more than your true self, like, then I think you get fucked. Why would we get fucked? Now I don't know, but just that's what seems to be happening, right? So anytime you anytime you make something nice, but you're like, okay, I make something nice, but it's very important for me that I survive more than my good intentions. I think that fucks up the dynamic. But if you're like, here, I made
Well,
this
that was
car.
like,
Yeah.
no, you can keep going.
No, that's what happened. Like, there's certain like TED talks I see. It's always like cancer survivors, right? They didn't do anything with life or whatever, and then like last 2 years, oh, you're gonna like die in 2 years or something, and then they just do everything out of good intention. oh, you know what, I decided to like donate this because my heart burned, and everything flows. In the TED talk they're saying, yeah, now I have like 20 different organizations doing this, and it's like, dude, yeah, how did you get here? And they did nothing but good intentions. But they still, that somehow was more effective, and her need for survival was met in abundance compared to when you're actually trying to meet the need of survival. That's what Alan Watts were talking about, like breathing in, like breathing out. It's like you have this desire, yeah, but they have to like let go of the desire as well for it to like come back. And it's bizarre how the dynamic works like this. But yeah, I don't know why exactly though. What are you saying?
I was just thinking about this, like living in abundance, and like on one side of the coin, I think when there's like big traumatic events, and I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier. Just like I think it was about what Boots was saying when there's always like a negative kind of event that, or there's this dark side to love kind of thing. And I
Yeah,
was thinking about the like after any kind of like huge traumatic disastrous event that happens, whether it's like weather or some kind of human on human violence kind of thing, like there is this like overwhelming like support in a community and people like all banding together and this like overwhelming amount of love, and then you get a few weeks out from it and it just everybody goes back to like living their own lives again, and then like um everything kind of just calms down. And then I started thinking about when you were saying about survival and or just like living within your means and just saying, okay, I have food, I have a place to sleep, I have this, so like that's all I need. And then I thought about how with the pandemic, how everyone was like rushing to the stores
yeah,
and they're like, all the toilet paper's gone and this is gone and
yeah,
that's gone. And it was like all that was out the window. Everyone was trying to live
yeah.
like above out of this fear. Um, I
Hoarding
don't even
stuff.
really know where I was going with it. But yeah,
Yeah,
it just sparked that in me of just like the human reaction to a lot of things.
yeah. If you think about the moment everyone thinks there is not enough, look, it's toilet paper, right? Everyone has enough toilet paper. Yeah, for like fucking years, there are enough toilet paper. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
this, but the moment everyone thought, oh, there might not be enough toilet paper, that became the reality. There wasn't enough toilet paper. It's
Yeah.
like, dude, which, like even us, right? Imagine we don't know each other, right? So it's all just good intentions.
Uh-huh.
We're just talking. But imagine I was in your a colleague or something, and let's say I had to like get work done or something. It would definitely affect this friendship to like some extent. It wouldn't be as clean as just talking to a bunch of strangers. It's not like you have any effect on my life and I have any effect on your life, right? But the moments of the
Uh-huh.
people that you work with have effect, and they kind of like do something that you don't like. It's a different dynamic. It's not like
Hmm.
this.
That was part of my intent for doing a book club in this way, where people you could pretty much share as much of yourself as you would like, but no matter what, there was sort of like a threshold of safety you had because, I mean, it's pretty much anonymous.
Yeah,
We know things about each other, but we don't really know fully. And I think there's a lot of value in that.
yeah.
Allows you to kind of, I don't know, take more philosophical risk.
Philosophical. No, even if you
Speak
did know,
freely.
right? Yeah, even if you
Hmm.
did know, it's not like we have an effect in our life. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like anything in my life affects your survival, or anything in your life affects my survival.
It definitely removes a few elements that can be challenging. I mean, even just in communication, if you think about body language, and how wrapped up we can be in our speaking when we're observing people's body language, we
Mhm.
can't see, so like we can only hear, and we can still draw maybe assumptions or opinions based on the way we speak or how little or how much. Like no matter, there's always something. We're always doing this, but it does strip away a lot. The way that we're
Yeah,
doing this, which I think was very interesting. I think it's very valuable too.
and I think that's something like our desires, right? I feel there's desire, and then there's yearning to be our true self. Yeah, and there's
I'm
and
always reluctant to cast the net over desire because I think
yeah,
it's unfathomable. I mean, there's
Yeah.
just so much. Like, there's so many angles to take,
Yeah.
and I often wonder what I've mentioned this for something else, and I can't really remember what it was. Maybe it was for desire, but I often wondered what a society would be like if desire was looked at as nothing different than breathing, but it was a more
A creative
uh,
conflict.
m- hmm?
A creative conflict.
Well, we've talked about
Like
desire
challenges.
being this sort of passive thing, right? Because you don't,
Mm.
because if like, let's just say, if you had full control over your being, you would probably never put half the desires that you have in your head, but you don't have full control. I mean, even in your physical body, like you don't have control over your digestion or really how much your heart beats. I mean, you could probably make yourself anxious enough to where it could beat
Yeah.
differently, but you really don't have control over that. Um, you may have control over your hand, but you don't have control over the synapses in your brain that make your hand move. So there's a lot about our being that's really not in our control,
Autopilot.
and we don't really think about that. And so I think that like with desire, I mean, just if even if you could like have like all the control in the world um, over
Yeah.
these things, I don't think it really leaves us with very much to walk
Yeah.
away with. And
I.
so,
Yeah.
in that case, I think approaching it with like a sort of a sort of passive mindset where we don't really get hung up on our breathing. I mean, maybe it hurts sometimes, and so we're kind of like we turn our awareness to our breathing, maybe breathe in a certain way, or we have a technique for breathing. But most times you're not really concerned about it. Like you just let it go. And so
Mm-hmm.
I often wonder if we raised people to kind of approach desire and these sorts of things in that way, what would happen?
Mm,
What if you didn't get hung up on having a desire? You just realize that, maybe it's like a stitch in your breathing. Like I just need to like focus on it for a little bit and then move on.
I feel like if you
Because
have, I feel like if you
go
have no
ahead.
desire, you just be like rocks, you know. I think what as humans we are really looking for is like creative character building conflicts. That's the story, right? You have like creative character building conflict where after the conflict you are more truer to who you were compared to like before. However, I feel like the conflicts that we have right now doesn't feel character building. It doesn't feel like a challenge, right? It almost feels like a necessity or something like that. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't know how to describe that though.
It may not need to be described. Usually you can view that as a wall. If you have trouble describing it, maybe that's the description.
it's like it's like what Alan Watts said about learning French, right? Imagine you learn French for the sake of curiosity and being more happy or to understand the culture more. There's a creative character building conflict, you know. But if you're learning French because it's a part of a curriculum and you have to learn it to get a certain grade so that your job doesn't affect or something like that, it's not a character building conflict, right? It's almost like an obstacle that's like you don't want to do, yeah, but now you're in the situation and you're in the system that you have to do it. If
I just
you
usually think of it as a leech. It's like leeching your energy. I think that
yeah,
things that you do for other than just doing it takes a lot more energy than just doing something you appreciate. I think we even see this in our interactions with people, or even like I think everyone's experienced the thing where waking up at 7 a.m. for school is a drag, but waking up 7 a.m. on a weekend is easy.
yeah,
Like, or spending an hour with a close friend, and spending an hour in a class you don't appreciate. I mean, those are two different like
yeah,
spans of time. I mean, I think it's all relativity, right? Like,
yeah,
so I mean, I think investing in something for some other reason other than the thing itself is a lot of energy, and it's very draining. And maybe there's just times where we should do that. I mean, I'm definitely not one to say how it should be. I just know for me for a fact that doing these things for reasons outside of the thing itself is taxing, and I get very tired more quickly than I would doing something that I enjoy, like this. Like I could do this all day and I would probably feel completely fine.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
talking about something else, would drain me. Maybe like within the first 15 minutes, I'm done. Like going to the doctor and talking about my health. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to. Like it's like, oh my gosh, 20 minutes and I'm done.
Wait, where do you feel the pain exactly? In your throat? I don't know, doc. Somewhere in my throat. In your uvula? I don't know, doc. It's like, what about your stomach?
Exactly.
Oh my god, dude. I don't know. I wish I could just USB plug in and like send you the fucking information through email or something, you know? Fuck. Yeah, that's so interesting. I feel like,
I really,
Mhm.
sorry, you go. You can go.
No, I was about to say, I really, it's really coming to me the Ramdas thing. There's the humanity and this divinity, and it's like almost like a tug of war that you're playing. Some things that we're doing for like humanity, and some things we are doing for like to know more about our divinity. That's it. What were you saying, Nina?
What were we gonna say, Nina?
Um, I was just thinking about like learning again, and just how we like create barriers to learning when we do a grade system like that.
Learning what?
Uh, just like a higher level of learning. Like there are some people out there who, would love to learn about higher level science stuff and all that, but they are like limited because they can't get through the prereqs or something like that. And it's like to put so many barriers on learning just seems so backwards.
Hmm.
Like,
I've often wondered if people learned some of the higher level stuff, if it would help with the lower level. Maybe that just the higher level comes easier to them.
yeah, and I don't know why we just don't give more opportunities for learning like that. It's kind of funny that when um, like older adults, I think they can go to classes for free when they're older in a lot of colleges, especially like community colleges.
Yeah.
I think that once you hit like 65, you can take courses, which is
Uh,
awesome because if
this,
you wanted to just learn something, you could, But I mean, I don't understand why. I mean, this is a huge issue, obviously,
yeah,
in America, but like that
yeah.
access to learning, why it became a business.
I think
I
it's
just don't
really because
understand.
the need for survival, right? The need for survival is getting tangled with the need for learning or the need for like yearning for this. I want to be free, curiosity. Yeah. So it's like, okay, these people survival is dependent on this. So now your survival is dependent on their survival, dependent on. Imagine this. Imagine everyone in the university gets free electricity, free food, free water. Lecturers get like abundant supply of lifeline, but lifetime thing or whatever, right? You wouldn't have to pay really
Mhm.
much, and it's not like that hard to like have it. Not many people is free education is not like a fucking revolution. It's happening. I think some country has free education. Yeah, but here's the thing though: for someone, for the model of free education to be supported, or even like for it to be sustainable, the consciousness of a human needs to be at a place where he's not driven by lust, right? Desire to possess. Oh shit, I have enough money, but what about my retirement? I need more money. When you have that kind of attitude, yeah, it's gonna be very hard to like sustain because you'll always want more. You'll always want
Nina, I
to eat
think
in
your
a
point about the
yeah.
go ahead.
Y-
Uh, I was gonna say,
mm,
I think your note about the free education for people above 65 indicates that we definitely understand what I guess like the benefits of pursuing like curiosity and interest. Because I mean, the reason that's free is because we know these people are retired and they need something to do. They
Yeah.
can't, they need to pursue something and to feel alive and stuff. And what better thing to do than explore your curiosity? But can't do that too early. Gotta work, provide for society.
It is interesting because I did when I was in grad school, I did a clinical in Denmark, and it was in this like really small island or on the small island. It's
Whoa,
called
really?
Bornholm.
Damn, that sounds
Yeah,
so
it
nice.
was like it was as rural as I guess you can get because this island was maybe like an hour flight from Copenhagen. So hospital acted as everything. Like it was long-term care, short-term care. The rehab had no limits. So like I could try whatever I wanted to. I could keep a person there as long as I wanted to. Like there was no limitation. So I mean, the reason I took that clinical was so that I could see the difference between our healthcare system and like essentially the socialist healthcare system. So where everyone just gets it. And
Socially.
I had some great conversations with some of like the Danish people there that I was working with that just grew up with this like free education, free to a point. I mean, I'm sure that it comes around somewhere that like through taxes or whatever that they are all paying for it together for everybody. But they like were like, yeah, we had a freedom to choose, and if you fail, you just switch to another thing, or you know, if you don't like it, it's not like a huge like financial investment. And
Yeah.
I remember she had said to me, and this is like a friend I still talk to regularly. She was like, I don't understand. Can you explain like why Americans don't want to pay for like other people to go to school? And I was like, I think it comes from like, well, I shouldn't have to pay for that person if I don't want to go to school. Like, why am I going to
Or no
pay
one
for my
paid for
neighbor's kid to
mine.
go to school? Yeah.
Like no one
Or
paid
like,
for mine,
why?
so why would I pay for someone else's?
It's like when you can't even
Yeah.
pay for
Or,
yours, how can you pay for someone else, you know? It's like,
yeah. Or it's like
so,
if we all were in this like world where we all are paying for it, it's like, well, I don't need it. So why am I going to pay for this other person? So she was like, I don't understand why. I don't understand still. And I'm like, it's
It's
such a,
backwards. It's very
yeah.
ingrained. I often look at it like expecting all the fruit, but not putting in it, like not watering any of the garden. You know, like just
Yeah. And
you don't want to do anything to cultivate what we want.
I just found myself so envious of like their freedom to study without this overwhelming dark cloud over you that like if you fail, like who are you letting down? And it does almost
yeah.
create in us that inherent like I have to be successful or else I'm going to hurt people around me. I could potentially like, you know, get my family in debt if I don't. Like
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's
it's a
huge
scary
repercussions for
existence.
these things. Like
Yeah.
if you get your subject of study wrong, like you've launched yourself into how much debt, which would take how many years? I
70,000.
mean,
Yeah.
it's definitely pushing people to just kind of double down on things they're not really behind. I mean, it's very there's a huge disconnect. I mean,
Yeah. How
I
can you ask a 18-year
that's a
old to like
very
make a choice and understand themselves and know what they like, what they don't like, and shit like that, you know? Like,
well, it's even worse when you consider that 18-year-olds like fundamental education, which really hasn't done anything with their interest, and it's everything with putting down like a scheduled education,
you better
like
take
Yeah.
this
putting
course.
down like expecting everyone to learn at a certain rate and conceptualize these things at the same way, and it's a self-defeating system. And then you put them into a college, and charge them buku's amount of money. Of course, they haven't been working or anything, and their parents are likely in a similar situation where they work like follow this system. It's truly. I mean, when you consider it, how like generational it is, it sucks. Like it sucks to think about, and it's very backwards. And it's very means to an end. We think it's producing what we need, and year after year we're becoming more and more like disconnected with the results that we're producing. I mean, if you just think about the general sentiment around the workforce, I mean, with COVID and like working from home, that is its own little battle in the workforce, right? Like people not wanting people to work from home, thinking it's not efficient, and having all these standards and rules and expectations. I mean, it's a very complex issue. Um, when you consider how long it's been going on too.
Yeah,
Yeah. Night.
it's definitely a mind fuck, yeah. Even I'm it, yeah.
Well, I work in a profession. I'm an occupational therapist. I don't know if I ever shared it, but just
I put
What is
that
it's the
that mean?
together.
elephant out in the room. An
What is
occupational therapist.
mm-hmm.
Gosh, it means so many things.
Oh.
It's like
Yeah, it's pretty
Pandora's
broad.
box.
Okay.
Um,
I don't know, open
So,
it then.
well, like we call it's kind of awesome, especially with all the stuff that we're talking about, and it kind of makes me realize why I'm so drawn to it. So it's about occupations, and occupations can be anything from, brushing your teeth in the morning and taking care of yourself, all your self-care, to like a leisure activity that you love.
Mm.
So it's all about whatever you find meaningful in your life. So it's a meaningful activity that you do during your day, and that's what we call an occupation. So there's a lot of ways that I can habilitate and rehabilitate that, and that's from birth all the way till someone's at their end of their life. And it's all about strengthening the skills that they need to be able to participate in those occupations. And then also, you can do adaptive things and modify activities, but it's all about being able to participate in life. It's like whatever you find important, I can work on, but our our whole healthcare system really puts us in a box where it's limited,
Yeah.
right? And I could go as far as like we can acquire new skills, but our world really is looking at like, well, you get them to where they were before. Like you rehab them to the point of where they were before, but we don't go beyond that, which is just so backwards.
Ooh.
Because it's like if
Damn.
if they want to explore new things, why can't we do that? So that's why I like working with kids too, because the opportunity is really endless with kids because they're always growing. So it's more about that habilitation, so like gaining new skills. But the thing with my profession right now, we started at a bachelor's and then they went up to a master's, and now they're trying to get us to go to doctorate and have that be the requirement as like your entry
Why?
level, which is what
I
physical
fucking
therapy did.
hate this.
Yeah. So we're all fighting against it because it really makes no sense. Especially I've worked with people who were grandfathered in from the bachelor degrees, and it really makes no difference once you're experienced in the field. Like even coming out with a master's degree and calling it entry level into a healthcare profession is just kind of wild. Because once you get your hands on, that's really where the learning starts.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
it's nothing like what you're sitting in the classroom. And fortunately, we have clinicals and things, but it's when you have that grade attached to things and that system, are you really learning? No, because you're so worried about, I need to get a C or above to even stay in the program. And then that
Yeah.
overwhelming feeling of like, if I fail here, and I like love what I do, I really do, and
Mm.
I wish I could do it without all the sanctions of like insurance and that. And um, I'm trying to do a little bit of that now, just through like privately doing work. But it is just like, and I think that has to do with a lot of healthcare. Like we're just so slaves to the man, basically. Of
Yeah.
I can only see this person. Like we have to think from the beginning. Like especially an outpatient, which I've worked in like almost every setting now, but an outpatient, it's like you're only getting like a certain amount of visits from a person for an entire year. So you have to like plan and use it sparingly and make sure that you're giving them what they need, but also not overdoing it so that you don't like so that you can plan for if they have to come back in. Like it's a really like slippery slope. But back to the education piece. So yeah, they're trying to push for the doctorate, and I think it has to do with just promoting like research and getting evidence-based um, practices because it legitimizes us as a profession. Uh, but at the same time, it's like, why
Yeah.
can't we just be good OTs that legitimize? I mean,
Yeah.
I do wish that we had more like evidence-based stuff. Like that's not really where I'm coming from, but I don't
Yeah.
know why we have to create a PhD
Uh,
program
yeah.
requirement for that to
I'll
work.
share something funny too. So I thought, at least in
Huh.
India, you could do this. I don't know. I was too scared to do this, but I always wanted to change the education system and work with kids and stuff like that, right? And kind of like teach them mindfulness, philosophy, stuff like that, which will like help them know at least where are they going, stuff like that. So, so I came to Canada. So I'm right now in Canada. So I called up a school and I said, "Yo, I'm doing my master's in University of Windsor. Uh, because I didn't want to tell them I'm doing computer science, right? I thought, oh,
Mhm.
if they know I'm like a master student, I thought, look, I don't want to help them or anything. I just want to ask questions, like a survey or something.
Mhm.
Just that. And the principal I was talking to, luckily she was like a PhD candidate in a university too. So she was like, yeah, you can't do that. You have to, like, first of all, you have to get through the board of education and they have to approve you. First of all, you have to go talk to your supervisor, your
Mhm.
advisor. Now they have to approve. They have to, like, talk to the board of education, and then you have to get some things documented, gone through them. And she was like, dude, I'm like a PhD student, right? I'm a principal of the school, and even I don't have that much power where I can just like run. I'm like, I'm like, okay, if this principal doesn't have that much power, there's no way in hell I would ever have any power. So I kind of like give. But
Mhm.
think about it this way: no one can intervene them unless the kids ask for help. You can't help them. The kids who need help, you can. Let's say if kids are struggling with anxiety and stuff, but then you like put him, oh, this guy's like ADHD, boom, put him in ADHD or some shit like that. Disconnect. There's nothing to stop it. Yeah, they are being taught by people who fucking hate their job. I mean, not everyone, but some people. You know, that rubs up on them. He's like a guy working for like a minimum. They don't even get paid that well. Which also like a mind. Why the fuck aren't teachers getting paid well? And it's like they just like lost. they- I don't get it, man. It's just so confusing. From a kid's
Hmm.
perspective, there's no reason for them to like become like fucking brilliant unless their parents are really good. It's just fucking tough because both parents work a full-time job to clear their debt. Great. So when a kid enters their home, it's an empty house. So they just play games. It's fine, I guess.
Mhm.
But this is where we at,
Now the next generation is it's going to be interesting with all this like screen time and everything too. Um, but I feel fortunate that yeah I can touch on that stuff with the kids too now. It's interesting to just see, and we've talked about this before, just like you're seeing in real time like the influence and their foundations being built, whether it's
Mm.
from the school system or their family system or just the town that I live in. Like it's shaping these kids, and like all you can do is teach them strategies and then they can choose to use them if
You
they
c-
want to.
here's what I realized with kids: you can't teach them anything. I think you can only inspire them, like with films and stuff like that. Films like the movie Soul is such an amazing movie. Yeah, not just in like
Hmm.
terms of the message and stuff, even the way it like appeals to it. It has like a very simple message. It's a very emotional, purpose driven, like, well, what's your purpose kind of thing. Kids watch it, but it does make an influence on them. Oh, I want to be like this piano. Like, at least contemplate them more, and they would now be curious enough to like search for answers. And one thing I'm so glad about is that answers are everywhere. You just need to have a question. Once you have a question, you'll easily get the answer. Even like existential questions like this, you have Alan Watts, who like did this from like 1950s or whatever. So the answer, I feel, isn't really the thing. It's like what inspires them to even like ask, seek. That's like interesting. Hard, challenging. A lot of effort too. Damn, movies are not easy to like make. Stuff like that,
Hmm.
you know?
Hmm.
And to have like the consciousness to make a high consciousness movie that would not sell as good as like a low consciousness one. Damn, that's tough. Imagine how much a person would have to sacrifice. Do you want to make this blockbuster movie that everyone would watch, but it's just like some random shit some low consciousness movie? Or would you take the high route, make a high consciousness movie, yeah, lose money, all right? It probably would make impact, but you'll never be conscious of the impact it made. You'll never actually see the repercussions of this impact. So you don't actually know whether it made an impact or not. Would you choose that? It's a tough, it's like a mindfuck choice,
Yeah.
you know?
Um, with coming up on our usual time where we end, I wanted to mention our voting for next book,
Mm.
and
I think you have
Nina, you
the.
gotta get on Rave to vote. You gotta get him
He
on
didn't
here,
vote.
because it looks like we have a tie. He hasn't voted yet. Right now it's a tie between Vito's recommendation, "The End of Your World," and the wisdom of insecurity, which I put on there, um, since it was one of our books from our last vote.
Mm.
Um,
Okay, I can
I,
totally get on him.
yeah, get on him, tell him to exercise his vote. I typically do not vote in these because I am happy to read whatever the group wants to read.
You
And
can't do
since
that, man. You have to like pick a side, you know. Either come to the light or the dark side. Yeah, that's how the work of spiritual is. Yeah, you have to make a decision.
I'm
Let
happy
go.
in the middle.
Yeah.
I'm happy in the indifference. If I had to break a tie, I would. But I'm happy. I like to see where everyone's general interest is before having. And I haven't had to do it so far. We usually um you know collectively decide. But with you know I guess the best case scenario is we have a book selected by the end of the weekend. Um, but it's a holiday weekend, so I'll probably wait until like Tuesday or Wednesday. And I want to give people time to get the book. So if we don't have enough time for everyone to get the book and read the chapter, we can always use another audio to discuss for next week. And let everyone order the book and read the first chapter. I haven't read actually. I've only read one of the books that's on this list. I haven't read The Wisdom of Insecurity. I've listened to enough Alan Watts that I probably
Yeah. Yeah.
have have some knowledge of what it goes over, but I've never actually read it. So I know it's a good book. I mean, it's one of the three of like Watts has like a signature three books that people usually gravitate towards. But I am interested in the book that Vito recommended as well.
Yeah, it's
So if
really
it
good.
doesn't get selected, we could always put it back on the list
Yeah.
to make sure we eventually get to it.
Yeah, I'll see if I can get Rave to cast his vote. Um, Hopefully he'll break the tie and not create a worse tie, a three-way tie.
Here he comes. He's like, "Oh, Carl Jung, let's do that."
Yeah.
Oh my, three-way tie, dude. It's funny.
But yeah, I mean, whatever happens. Like I said, I'll break the tie, or I'll have Siri break the tie. Have her pick a number one through three or something. Um, but this was good. And, I'm happy that we got to discuss an actual lecture or seminar by Watts. As always, it's branched off to some good stuff and covered a lot of ground. One note.
I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead.
go for it. No, you go for
Uh,
it.
okay. What I was going to mention, Nina. One note, just from what you and Vito were discussing over education. I the increase of like requirements for OT and PT was one of my reasons for not continuing on that path. Because
Really?
I was over school. I was I could tell like how hard I was forcing it, and I realized halfway through how much of my effort in school was just for a degree, and felt very detached from it. And so I needed to just get out and go into the world and just work and kind of develop interests. Yeah, but PT and OT, my degree was exercise science, and so it
Oh.
was my natural path was to go into PT and OT, and I
What
was
is
looking at both
PT
of them.
and OT mean?
Physical therapy. It's more. I mean, both of these are very broad
I think,
studies because
yeah. Boots.
like PT can go into like athletic training and
Yeah.
with athletes, or you can work with like different populations of the public and help them with recovery. And then
Okay.
OT, as Nina explained, I mean, there's a vast amount of things you can do
Yeah.
with OT.
I feel like we both would do amazing at like, just coaching or like helping other people without the education system. Like let's say there wasn't no education system, right? I feel like we would kill it. But I'm not like willing to like go through the
I
masters and
think an
doctor.
education system is inevitable, right? Because
Yeah.
like we just find
Mm.
things, we find techniques, and they're like, well, how'd you do that? And there you go, you have an education system. Like I think how systematic the system has become, and which is highlighted in what Nina shared about OT, where there's maybe a good aim in what they're trying to do, like because like you want stuff to come out of the field that's helpful, and usually having like evidence-based research is the most helpful in our society. But there's also some really um you know disappointing, non-ideal, sort of pointless measures that we take to to get there. And it's almost like, Nina, I don't know how long you've been in the field, but I imagine that you're very experienced.
Yeah,
And for someone to say you need a PhD to be a good occupational therapist
it's
is just
crazy.
not true. Because I'm sure in your
Sounds
years
like an
of experience
excuse.
could trump a degree. Because
Yeah.
like, what does that mean?
Well, like, and then the other thing is we have requirements of continuing education too to maintain licenses, only in certain states. Like in the state of New Jersey, I'm not required to have continuing
Whoa.
education,
What?
which is weird. But to
Like,
get to be an OTR, which means registered, I have to have some kind of continuing education for on a national level.
Registered as if you weren't before.
Yeah,
dude,
well,
that's so
that's the other
triggering,
piece.
dude.
The, the thing about licensing, right? It's like, I guess it instills like trust um in your clients and patients and students and anyone that you're working with, that you're a licensed professional, and but it costs so much money to maintain those licenses. And
Mhm.
like, you look at what you do as like you want to help people, and it's like a gift almost, in a way. Not trying to like say I'm some
There's
amazing
so
person, but
yeah.
you want to like help, and then it costs like $200 to renew your license every 2 years, and top of thousands of dollars of continuing education, which I think continuing education is super important because obviously it keeps you, up with the times and with the relevant practices and everything. But
Imagine Joe
it's
Biden
just
makes
funny
it
how
free
there's money
education.
attached to everything.
I mean, it connects the community, right? Like continuing your education. Like maybe you're in the field and there's people who are doing research, and like you all got to get together and talk, right? So like you got to
Yeah.
continue to learn. But what it's kind of like, to me, it's horrific to think that someone who's passionate and good at their job
Yeah.
is limited by finances. And that's the exact opposite,
And you're like
especially for
going deeper.
practices like, yeah, like it's the exact opposite of like PT and OT, what should be about. Like, we need, we
Yeah.
need the compassionate and the driven to be in that field. We don't need people who have tons and tons of money and are limited in that way. It's very counterintuitive. Um, so I hear you. I mean, that's frustrating. And this is just
Yeah.
one profession. I mean, how like I'm sure we could apply this to so many different things. Um,
Absolutely.
and it's crazy. And it doesn't really produce like the best results as a whole. May have some good parts, but it's definitely lacking in other areas.
Yeah, and I don't like how, like, the higher level of education you go, you're reducing the amount of people who like have the opportunity. Like, you're reducing opportunity.
Yeah,
Yes.
in
And
the
there's
land of
it's
opportunity too, right?
And you're going
yeah.
more in debt,
Yeah.
right? So you do need a fucking job. So now your need for survival is more real in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then, I mean, bachelor's degrees now are just becoming the next high school graduation for a lot of people. It's
Yep.
like a stepping stone to the next step. Like
It's
where
oh my god, it's trigger. Imagine this,
it's
right? Paying for a degree that you don't really need to like pay someone to like then owe someone else money that you didn't have to owe them in the first place. It's like it's it's like you're digging a pit and then jumping into it. You know what I mean? And then feeling stuck.
yeah.
It's so bizarre.
Well, it's hilarious because my bachelor's degree was public relations, which is
Oh,
nothing
really?
to do. Yeah, it was communication. Like I just, didn't know what I wanted to do, and I found that the communication was something that like a skill that I already felt like I possessed, so it was a little easier to like just go into it. Um, so I just went that route, and then I completely changed. But that bachelor's degree, like I still applied it. Like it was just a requirement to have your bachelor's degree to get into grad school, plus a few prerequisites that were science based for my field. It's always funny to me that like I started in something that has nothing really to do, I guess you can relate communication to everything, but still, like it was like a total 180 from what I was originally going towards. So just that's what makes me feel like the bachelor degree is like just another piece that like a checklist. Like boop, got that. Okay, next. Like just funny.
I just want to help people. But imagine, look at the price you're paying, right? To just wanting to like help people. Doesn't feel fair.
Well, yeah, and it's
I mean, the what you're
not.
sacrificing doesn't feel commensurate to your desire to help. It almost feel like, okay, I want to help people, and here's the price you have to pay.
Well, it's funny where the money gets allocated because I'm sure like the big institutions they get paid lots of money to do care, like patient care. Yet uh, certified nursing assistants, the CNAs, who are doing the real brunt of the care of patients, are getting paid minimum wage, and it's like
It's crazy.
they're they're literally like showering our older adults that are incapable of taking care of themselves. They're you know doing toilet hygiene, they're doing all those things. Yet we, for some reason, don't value that profession. I just like that whole thing. I mean, I could go on for hours, so I'm just gonna stop here. But because like even
I
what with
believe
what
it.
I
I feel
do,
that.
Yeah.
yeah, like even with what I do, I'm like, I mean, I'm sometimes like there was moments where you're the only person visiting that older adult that's in a long-term care. And I mean, I would spend more time, and I was very productivity based in my first job where it was like every minute counts and you better clock out even if you have notes to do and work off the clock because we need like a certain amount of productivity basically for them to make the most money. But like
Oh my God.
there's no humanity in that. So it's find myself spending a lot of time like in those dark moments with people. And it's just funny when I mean, it's not about the money for me, but it makes me laugh to think like there's some big corporations, like big wig CEOs that
Yeah.
are making all this money. And here I am like holding somebody's hand, like as they're passing. It's like,
Yeah. It's
I don't know why that value is different, why we value some stuff more. It's because it makes more money.
no.
I
It's
don't
just
I
know.
because
mean,
the number
that's
of
where a
people who
lot
can
of
do it.
value hinges for sure.
Yeah. Number of people who can do it like decreases. Like, yeah. So
I don't mean to sound like I'm getting on like a
no,
soapbox of
no.
like,
Hey,
like
if
it's
you
so
are,
great.
step up on it. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no, I don't think there's anything wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
usually that comes from passion, and I don't think that should ever really
Yeah.
be stifled.
You should
Um,
speak up about it. If you don't, who else will? Probably everyone is like not speaking about it, thinking like this. You know what I mean?
Well, I think it's true because I mean the other reason I got into the field is like you don't always hear about the OTs and everything, and I liked how like humble that profession was. And
Yeah.
I think that comes with a lot of healthcare, because we just see so much that we're not like, oh, I'm a healthcare worker and blah, 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 like, look at all the stuff I do. Because I mean, like, looking death in the face, like, really humbles you every day.
yeah,
Yeah.
And you're just like, well, what else? It's really not important for us to go around and say, look what we've done, like, look at my accolades.
Yeah.
It's just, and I think like you hit it right on the head. Like, that's probably why sometimes people don't get because we don't get into it for the money. We get into it for that purpose of like
Yeah.
trying to help somebody or being there. So it's not like
Yeah.
we find it hard to fight.
Because think about it, it's like for you to like do something for someone else, this at least the system is structured in a way. The more you're helping someone else, yeah, the more your survival is getting threatened simultaneously.
Mhm.
So it's like more from your survival. So you need to be abundant enough where you can give, because every time you give, it's like your chances of survival like kind of decreases. The way it's structured.
Yeah, I've poured from an empty cup before, and it's not.
Yeah.
I
yeah,
don't do my
that's
best
hard.
work when I'm doing that,
You
and
Yeah.
I
gotta have
recognize
your
it.
cup filled.
Yeah,
But it's
a
hard to fill your
disservice
cup
to me
and
and
there are
to the
holes in it.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true.
So you're trying to like pour
Well,
water in this cup that has holes in it. you're paying money to the system, then you have like now you owe someone else, now you're paying money to make money. Who's gonna pay for that, These people, right? So
Mhm.
now you're dependent on their pay, yeah. So now the good work that you have to give them becomes like a condition, right? It's like a thing, oh, you have to do good work, and that fucks it up. Any shirts also that fucks it up, the dynamic. It's not pure now, because it's an expectation
Mhm.
that needs to be met. And energetically it like just like the fuck, it's
Well, we
interesting.
don't have we don't have Rave to sign us off with a reading, but
I
I'll
have.
try to.
Oh, you have?
Do you have one?
Yeah, I do have one. But
All
if you
right.
Oh,
have
cool.
one, let's go,
I do not have one, but I will do better about having one.
Well, I like the last line in the book. How about Vito, if I could say the last line and then you can do
Yeah, yeah.
yours
Yep, yep,
and
yep.
you can be the final. Because I thought it was great. This was that hang up the phone one.
Hmm.
And I said,
And
after all, it was Alan who used to say, when you get the message, hang up the phone. So enjoy your conversations with him. Let the chatter in the skull cease when your heart minds are met. Put the book aside and dance for a while.
dude,
I
can you
It's
really
a
like
very good
type it
last
out?
that.
line.
Yeah, can you type out that line and put it as my status? I really like that line.
I can send it to you if you want.
Yeah, yep. Just send a picture or something, yeah. So here's
Yeah.
like another one from the Emmanuel's book, right? Ramdas referenced. To know the presence of God's will, you need to listen to many voices that live in you. You will find voices of fear, rage, contradiction, obstinacy, illusions of all sorts. When the voices become familiar, then the gentleness, the softness, warmth, and the light of your inner wisdom can can be more easily heard. Yeah, that's the line.
Yeah, I like that.
I do too.
All
Well,
right.
um, thanks for the conversation, everyone, and
Yep. Always
have
a
a good
pleasure.
holiday weekend. A nice long weekend,
Long.
and
Definitely.
I'll talk to you guys next week.
Yeah, I'll see you.
Sounds good.
Bye.
See ya.